I've been on the defensive this whole time, like, explain this Bible contradiction, explain this passage from the Second Vatican Council, which is fair, you can criticize my beliefs, but I've heard one positive argument. I mean, I've been here for probably an hour and a half. I've heard one positive argument for Islam, which is that the way that prayer is described in Nehemiah...
Do help yourself if you so wish.
Yeah, please help yourself.
Thank you so much, it's very kind of you. I've heard one positive argument for Islam so far, which is that the way that prayer is conducted in Nehemiah, in the Old Testament, is similar to the way Muslims pray. Okay, so I would like to hear some more positive arguments, and just hold on one, because I'm sure you've got many. Like, why should I accept Muhammad as a prophet? Why should I accept the Quran as divine revelation? The other thing I wanted to speak about, obviously Mustafa's got to pray now, I did want to get into this, is divine claims of the New Testament. Because he made the absolutely incredible claim that the New Testament, like in this form, because I know you think this is a corrupted book, but he said that the New Testament in this form not once ascribes divinity to Jesus Christ, which I think it's bold. Okay, so I do want to go through one bit of this. So if we could maybe, I'll go through one title that I think presents quite a big issue for the Islamic worldview, and then I'll hear you out on some positive arguments for Islam.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so you've probably heard of this before if you've been doing this for a while.
I mean, I'm not as knowledgeable as Mustafa and the other brothers. If I don't know how to respond, then I'll be honest with you, and I'll get him to respond.
That's fine, and there were points that he made I can respond to.
Sure.
Okay, so we're to Mark 14. Okay, so in this particular part of Mark's Gospel, and I'm picking Mark's a good one. It's like, you know, you can make the case, and you know, scholarship has some consensus on this. Mark is definitely written earliest, and you could maybe argue that there are weaker theological claims made in Mark. The claims of divinity are less in nature, and so the divinity of Christ is something which sort of snowballed over time, and then culminates in Nicaea. You know, Constantine convokes the council, Jesus is God, bam, and now we've somehow gotten away from the original message of Christ, which is, you know, quite a common Muslim. I think that's what Mustafa was sort of trying to argue.
Sure. But
I think this claim in Mark throws a massive spanner in the works for that argument, because this is clearly the earliest gospel written, if you're going to accept scholarship, but it's a big claim. So I'm going to shut up now and just get to the verse.
Yeah, sure.
So Mark 14, I'll go in. I do know the particular verse.
Is it 14 verse 61?
61. It's a little lengthy.
On the trial, yeah.
Yeah, you know, the trial of the Sanhedrin. Okay, cool. So Mark 14. Okay, I'll start from there. Then the high priest stood up before them and asked Jesus, "Are you not going to answer? What is the testimony that these men are bringing against you?" But Jesus remained silent and gave no answer. Again, the high priest asked him, "Are you the Messiah?" We agree on that already. The Son of the Blessed One. So this is something we were talking about earlier with Peter's confession in Matthew chapter 16. He calls him the Son of the Blessed One, the Son of God. "I am," said Jesus. But he doesn't stop there. "And you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven." Now, I've seen people argue that's not a divine claim, the Son of Man. Man is just referring to humanity. However, hold the phone. Let's continue a little bit more, okay? The high priest tore his clothes. "Why do we need any more witnesses?" he asked. "You have heard the blasphemy. What do you think?" So I'll start here. There's one more verse that links to this one, because Jesus is referring to part of the Old Testament here. And I'll get to that and then I'll let you answer. So Jesus says something at his trial which causes a Jewish member of the Sanhedrin to accuse him of blasphemy. Now, if Jesus was preaching Islamic monotheism, he would never have been accused by the Jews of blasphemy, because Islamic monotheism is not blasphemous to a Jew. Because Jews agree with you, there's only one God, and there's no partners with him, there's no alternative hypostases. So for the high priest to accuse him of blasphemy, this is significant. But what is he actually referring to? The reference is, some of you guys may know this, Daniel chapter 7 verse 13, it's in the Old Testament. So, somewhere around here. It's after.
The high priest with the Pharisees.
Yeah, I believe so.
And they wanted to get rid of Jesus of any
I'll be honest with you,
cause.
I've read the Bible for a while, man. I've done extensive search ages ago, but but I'm familiar with the passages that he brings up.
It's bad, I can't find it.
That's okay.
It's so small, I'm like, there we go.
No worries.
Daniel, okay, cool. Let's go to Daniel chapter 7. So remember, Jesus says, "And you will see the Son of Man sat at the right hand of the Mighty One, coming on the clouds of heaven." Okay, what is he referring to? This is
Jesus the Mighty One?
No, he's going to be sat. So he says, he says the Son of Man will be sat at the right hand of the Mighty One. Okay, so and this is a prophecy in the Old Testament.
So that you can read. No, so that you can read it.
Yeah, you can read it. You can read it. Yeah, no worries.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is a prophecy that the Sanhedrin would have been well familiar with. They're very learned in the Torah and the Tanakh. They're going to know what this is about. Okay, I'll read. Okay, so this is Daniel having a dream. Okay. As I looked, Daniel speaking now, thrones were set in place, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. This is referring to God the Father, or for the Jews, just God, because they don't know the Trinity yet. His clothing was as white as snow, the hair of his head was white like wool. His throne was flaming with fire, and its wheels were all ablaze. A river of fire was flowing, coming out from before him. Thousands upon thousands attended him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court was seated and the books were opened. So the stage is being set. The Ancient of Days is sat at this great assembly. Then I continued to watch because of the boastful words the horn was speaking. I kept looking until the beast was slain and its body destroyed and thrown into the blazing fire. The other beasts had been stripped of their authority but were allowed to live for a period of time. So this is referring to a period at the end of the world. This is the most important verse, okay? In my vision at night I looked, and there before me was one like a son of man, coming with the clouds of heaven. Link to what Jesus said. He approached the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence. He was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations and peoples of every language worshipped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed. Okay, so just to recap, the Son of Man is led into the presence of the Ancient of Days and is sat at his right hand. He is given the worship which is due only to the Ancient of Days. He is worshipped by people of all nations and all languages, and he has an everlasting kingdom. Okay. So,
who gave him worship? Who gave him power?
People. So the Ancient of Days is the one who the Son of Man is sat at the right hand of.
The Almighty that gives him the glory.
Okay, so
yeah. Daniel was also worshipped, but nobody objected.
Okay, so it says he was given authority, glory, and sovereign power.
Who is that?
Presumably the Father.
So stop there.
Yeah.
Is the Father and the Son the same?
No.
They're distinct.
Of course they are. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
That doesn't rebut what I'm saying. For a Christian, the Father is the source and the fountain of the Godhead. So
he's a deity.
Many Christians have said. This depends actually. I would say. No, I'm aware. Okay, I'd say the Son is also autotheos as well.
The deity applies to the Father.
Yeah.
You agree? Does it apply to the Son?
Oh, I need to consult the catechism on this. I think it does. I think it's only the Spirit which a deity does not apply, I believe.
Yeah, but do you not say the Son proceeds from the Father?
Yeah, the Son no. So the Son is begotten of the Father, and together the Son and the Father spirate the Holy Spirit.
But the word begotten is another word for proceed, because in the King James Bible,
generate,
they've used the word begotten.
Yeah, I don't read the King James at all.
No, but all other Bibles use the word proceed, because
begotten, not made. That's the Nicene Creed, yes.
The Almighty Father is the first cause, not the Son. The Son precedes.
Sure, I don't disagree, but we're getting away from the passage here, because what I'm saying is that Jesus at his trial looks at this prophecy. So the Jews have no idea who the Son of Man is. This would have been a source of great confusion to a first century. Just hold on.
Okay.
This would have been a source of great confusion to a first century Jew. Who is this Son of Man who's going to sit next to God and be worshipped and given an eternal kingdom? Jesus at his trial, and this doesn't prove that Jesus is this person. What it does show is that Jesus considered himself to be this person.
Yeah.
So what this knocks out you guys, a Jew can still say, yeah, Jesus said this and he was wrong about it.
Yeah.
Jesus is not the Son of Man, and that's why he died on the cross and was buried. Okay, but this is a massive problem for the Islamic worldview.
No, it's not.
Let me finish.
This is a dream from Daniel. This is a dream from Daniel.
Hold on. I know it's a dream, but this is a dream that Daniel has, which is recorded in the Jewish scriptures as a prophecy. So the Sanhedrin, who Jesus is speaking to, are aware of this prophecy, and this is gonna, like, we can go back and forth on the philosophy of it. It is the Father, the source and fount of the Godhead, who is our say. But what the important thing is? Hold on. Okay, the high priest tears his robes when Jesus says this and accuses him of blasphemy, because he knows a human being cannot put himself in that position, which means he's not just, at the very least, he is not merely a prophet, because a mere prophet would never say, yeah, at the end of time, I'm going to be sat right next to God.
This is a dream.
everyone is going to worship me. I'm aware. I'm fully aware it's a dream. It's a prophetic dream.
Can I ask you?
The prophet of Daniel.
Can I ask you a question? Can I ask you a question? If you read in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 24, Jesus taught everything that he was prophesied in the written scriptures to the disciples. Did any of the disciples of Jesus use this as a prophecy?
Do they call him the Son of Man?
No, that's not my question. What I asked you, in the Gospel of Luke chapter 24, it mentions that Jesus taught everything that he was prophesied in the written scriptures. He's talking about the Old Testament, right? So the disciples of Jesus, they were aware of what Jesus is claiming that he was prophesied from the scriptures. Do we find any of the disciples of Jesus using this prophecy of Daniel as an evidence?
It depends what you mean by as an evidence, but I would say they refer to him as Son of Man.
So why don't we see the apostles of Jesus in the book of Acts? Why don't any of the apostles believe that Jesus was divine?
They do, because they call him Son of Man repeatedly. And the term Son of Man is used something like 200 times in the New Testament.
Yeah. What does Son of Man mean? What does that mean?
It's right here. So can I get
not Son of God, Son of Man.
That's right.
Son of Man.
So Son of God is not a divine claim. Okay, maybe Christians have said this to you before. Son of God is not a divine claim. Because
we're not asking about that.
God. What we're asking. Son of Man.
What does that mean?
I'm drawing a distinction. So Son of Man, when Jesus is called the Son of Man by an apostle, by someone else that he interacts with, they are referring him to this prophecy. They are identifying him.
You've got proof of them referring him.
I don't. No. From my understanding. Okay.
So if we're going to talk about proof and like, can I rely on these scriptures? That's an entirely separate conversation.
No. My question is, you said the apostles refer to this specifically. You did quote.
So
you said that.
Yeah, I did.
So I want to know where clearly the apostles refer to Daniel.
Yes.
That was his question.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. So I'm not saying that you can find a verse where an apostle says, guys,
not even a verse.
Go
a
to
source
Daniel.
of them saying.
In the book of Acts, the early church history, we don't see the apostles ever commissioning around saying that Jesus is God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. These three are co-equal. Why don't we find that? Well, because remember, the book of Acts is believed to have been authored by Luke, whoever it was, the 2-volume book, the book of Acts, the Gospel of Luke, right? Yeah. So if you're saying that Mark is the earliest gospel and Luke came afterwards, right? Why don't we find any of the apostles or any of the disciples of Jesus using this as evidence?
Why don't we?
Yes, why don't we? If he's making a divine claim here, why don't we see Peter? Why don't we see John? Why don't we even see Barnabas? Why don't we see any of them believe that Jesus was divine?
Okay, so
we don't see there's a disparity.
There's two different arguments here, so I'll go with yours first. Yeah. So how do I know the disciples are referring to this passage specifically? Because this is where the term Son of Man comes from. It's found nowhere else in the entire Old Testament. And if you want to consult the scholarship on this, on what the term Son of Man means, you can just look it up. Where does the term Son of Man come from? It is this specific prophecy in Daniel.
It's just
your
a claim.
Understanding of
Son of Man is what is stated in the text.
When you read it out.
No, I was here.
No. Can I say one thing? The reason why the Jews accuse him of committing blasphemy is not because they believe Jesus claimed to be God here. It's because Jesus claiming to be that eschatological figure that is prophesied, not because he was God.
It wouldn't be blasphemy. To call yourself the Messiah was not considered a blasphemous claim.
But
No,
because they rejected
they
him,
rejected
they didn't
him.
see him
Exactly.
as a Messiah,
Yes.
hence
Yes.
they make him into being
Exactly.
So the initial accusation, if you notice, in Matthew chapter 9, Jesus forgives the sins of a paralytic man.
Yeah.
He says in the passive, please pay attention. Jesus says in the passive, come on Nazar, I want Nazar this way, I don't want anyone coming in.
Sure, yeah.
So come on Nazam, come here. This is my very good friend Nazam, and I want you to. I don't, Jack. This is critical, my friend, because you're a very sincere person. I can sense that. But I want you to just have a little chat with my friend over here as well.
Sure.
I'm just going to give everything over to him. We're just speaking about two things: the Son of Man.
Oh, okay.
So when I was praying,
I'll go on already.
yes,
Talking about the prophecy in Daniel.
in Daniel chapter
7. Yeah.
chapter 7. Now listen to his explanation of this. Go ahead, back Daniel. Then we'll go on to the latter point that you listen. Listen carefully.
the point with regards to Daniel?
So I brought up Mark chapter 14, like verses like 60 to 65 of the trial before the Sanhedrin. So Jesus says that you'll see the Son of Man sat at the right hand of the Blessed One and coming on the clouds of heaven. To which the high priest responds with an accusation of blasphemy.
I see.
I then linked it to to Daniel 7, which is the prophecy Jesus is referring to. And the argument that I'm making, you can critique it how you see fit, is that Jesus is identifying himself as this divine Son of Man, which is why the high priest accuses him of blasphemy.
So it depends on which gospel you read. So if you read Mark's gospel, it's not explicit that Jesus is speaking about himself. But if you read Luke's gospel, the same thing's been edited. So it's made to refer to about Jesus. Because in Mark, Jesus says, and you will see the Son of Man coming. But Luke says from now on, the Son of Man is here, or something like this. So it's been adapted or changed over time, where the original saying was really about someone to come in the future after Jesus. But the later church, they edited the saying and made it refer to about Christ.
How do you know they edited it?
So if you read the Gospels like horizontally and not just vertically, so when you come to a particular saying in Mark's Gospel, you compare the same saying with also Luke's Gospel and see how the saying's been changed.
Fair enough. So I get what you're saying.
It's the same incident, which is before the Sanhedrin, but it's been changed to make it refer to Christ.
This is where I'm disagreeing with you. So I'm not denying that the accounts are slightly different. But what I am saying is that in itself doesn't prove that it's been edited. To prove it's been edited, you would need to find an early manuscript of the original, and then something that a copyist or Luke, so maybe Luke had a copy of Matthew, and then he was like, this doesn't look like it's emphasizing the divinity of Christ enough. Let me embellish this a little bit and make it more clear. What I'm saying is you don't have that evidence. All you have is that the Gospels differ slightly, but this is quite normal for eyewitness testimony. If you go in a court of law, right, and you have eyewitnesses to like a crime that happens, right, and then one of them says, yeah, I saw the guy, so let's say someone got mugged over there and we see it, and we go to court for it, okay, and then one witness says, yeah, I saw 5 guys ran over, they beat this guy up and they took his phone. And the next witness comes in and says, yeah, I saw 6 guys run in and they beat this guy up and took his phone. A court of law wouldn't say, there's a contradiction on the numbers there, which means the mugging never took place. Because the very nature of eyewitness testimony means that you normally see a certain amount of disagreement on peripheral details and agreement on the most critical details. Okay, so the argument I would make is that the Gospels are similar enough that they're clearly describing the same real historical events, but they're different enough that they weren't just copied from each other.
I can say the Gospels, they're not like independent eyewitness or oral traditions, but they're dependent upon one another. The reason why you know this is because there's like certain parentheses, which is like a commentary or editorial remark, where the Gospels copy that. So it's not like, for example, Mark says, let the reader understand. So he's not. So that's not Jesus speaking, but that's the author saying.
That's fine.
And then Matthew also copies that part as well. Let the reader understand. So it's not like the independent like eyewitnesses writing down what they remember, but one is dependent upon another in order to get the information. If so, Matthew is like, for example, reading Mark's Gospel, and in Mark Jesus says, "I am." And you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and so on, coming with the clouds. So this seems to apply that the Son of Man is yet to come, like he's still to come. But if you compare the same episode in the same saying in Luke, I think it's Luke 22, where Jesus is before the high priest. It's verse 60 something as well, I think.
64?
69, But from now on, so basically they ask him, are you the Son of God, and so, or are you the Christ? And then he says, you say that I am. And then he says, but from now on, the Son of Man shall be seated at the right hand of the power of God. So he's no longer coming, but he's already present.
Yeah, it's not identical, but I'm not arguing on the basis of biblical infallibility. What I'm saying is that the Gospels can give us a reliable historical witness to what the historical Jesus actually did and said.
Sure, but they're not tape recordings.
Yeah,
so this conversation, for example, is being recorded. But the writers themselves, they have written sources or written materials in front of them.
Yeah, I'm sure they
have
probably had some oral traditions. But then, if they're writing years after these events, maybe they would ask their friend, what did Jesus say there again? Because like, you know, you're not going to remember exactly a conversation you had 20 years
you know, the New Testament, the printing press wasn't yet invented.
Yeah.
You know, it was invented like hundreds and hundreds of years later. So they would have to manually copy the writings.
Yeah.
So Matthew's using a copied version of Mark's Gospel, and so is Luke.
Yeah, but do you know that,
So
or is that just a scholarly hypothesis?
They didn't have the printing press back then.
No, but
So
I understand
Matthew's
that.
not using like an autograph copy of Mark.
No, what I'm saying
But
is
he's using
how,
some version of Mark's Gospel that's been copied.
Yeah, no. So what I'm saying is, how do you know that he had a copy of Mark's? You don't know that. You're
Oh yeah,
you're certain that.
yeah. No, I think there's very strong evidence.
Okay, sure.
So
Let's have a look at
if you go to Mark chapter 13.
I'm in Daniel.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
If you go Mark 13, it's where Jesus says, "Let the reader understand." So it'll probably be more easy if I just.
If you just want to quote, I can try to bring it up as well.
Let the reader understand. It's in Mark chapter 13.
You can just Google it. It'll just say, "Let the reader understand."
Mark chapter 13.
Yeah, okay. Just my internet's not so
Which
great.
verse are you referring? I'll pull it up.
Okay, here it is, verse 14. Let the reader understand.
13 is that 13, chapter 14.
Yeah. And then if you compare that with Matthew chapter 24,
To be fair, that's a good point.
no.
Yeah, I've got to hold my hands to that. That is a good point. That's
a good point,
yeah?
yeah?
Yeah, I'll
Excellent.
admit that. On the tape, guys, you can clip that.
No, it's cool. To be honest, I don't really like these types of discussions anyway, but
No,
we're just interested in the
I'm
so,
just
yeah.
joking.
Oh, okay, no.
I'm taking the mic a little bit. I'm sorry.
Now, can you just go?
What's the reference in Matthew 24 for let the reader understand? I actually should have highlighted it, but I
Matthew
forgot.
24.
So I found it.
Oh, you found
Yeah,
it?
I found it.
You know,
It was the
he's
same.
acknowledged the point. He's acknowledged he's
cool.
conceded the point.
I will concede that one.
Okay, no worries.
So,
So have you understood what's happened here as well?
I've actually missed it because I couldn't see it.
Do you want to explain what you've understood? to
yeah.
our friends?
So in Mark, this is my fiance. So in Mark chapter, Mark 13, 14.
Yeah.
In Mark 13, 14, there is an abomination that brings desolation being described. So I think it's like an eschatological prophecy about the end of the world. And then Mark, there's like an editorial note. So like Mark sort of breaks the fourth wall temporarily and says, "Let the reader understand," as in like, pay attention to what I'm saying here. Don't just like skip over this. And then if you read Matthew's account of the same thing, it has this like exactly the same editorial note there. Which, to be fair to you, that is very good evidence that Matthew was using Mark as a source. So I will concede that one. That's a very good point.
You know, you're very humble. I respect you. Go ahead.
You know, in the prologue of Luke's Gospel, Luke says that he also had like sources that he used in order to write his Gospel.
That makes sense. Do you not think?
And also the other one is the quote from the Old Testament.
Yeah.
You know, they refer to the Synoptic Gospels.
Yeah.
So the Synoptics, they quote from the Old Testament, and the Old Testament quotation appears identical in all three.
Yeah.
So it's not just merely like written sources. It's like if you're writing, you know, like Boris Johnson's, if he's giving like a presidential speech, prime minister speech, journalists, they would like be identical in terms of his words, like what he says, but not the narrative. The narrative, they will write it in their own style of writing. But in the synoptic,
so you're saying the words could be identical, but the narrative could be different?
Yeah, if they're quoting like Boris Johnson or like, you know, like the prime minister or the president, the words, the quotation of the words will be identical.
Yeah.
But everything else, like maybe
the commentary. Okay, fair enough. Yeah,
but in the synoptic gospels, it's not just the quoting Jesus' word as identical, but also the commentary as well is also identical as well in parts. So like if like that Mark chapter 13 verse 24, so that shows us an eternal relationship. Like one of them is copying from the other or is dependent. And this is widely acknowledged among scholars.
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
They call Mark his
Christian scholars
first, and
tend to
then
concede
yeah.
that.
Even conservative scholars like
think-
William Lane Craig.
Yeah. Well, that guy is a heretic, unfortunately.
Oh, okay,
He's a
which church you go?
Catholic.
So yeah, the Catholic Church teaches the Mark is the earliest, and so in the New Jerome Biblical Commentary, for example, is a Catholic commentary by the Vatican. They say that Mark was first, and Matthew and Luke copied from Mark.
True. I mean, not
I'm paraphrasing, but
I get
that's
that.
what they're saying in effect.
Not everything the Vatican comes out with is infallible, but let's just stick to mere Christianity.
Sure, that's fine. So Daniel chapter 7, if you
Yes.
read Daniel 7, it's a prophecy, but there's also commentary to that prophecy in the same chapter.
Yeah, because Daniel's recounting his own dream.
Yeah, so he didn't understand the vision because
it says right afterwards that he felt troubled by his own dream.
Yeah, and there's an angel standing next to him, and then the angel gives the interpretation of that vision.
You want chocolate?
I've already had a word reservation. Thank you so
Keep
much.
it for later or something, or just to remind us.
So here, I've got my phone out, so I got a race. Okay, so this is the verse that I pulled up.
Yeah.
And Daniel, he does comment on his own dream, but I'm not...
It's not so much Daniel himself, but the angel interprets the vision for him. Like he sees an angel.
Oh,
and then,
so this is the latter
half. So this part's the commentary of the vision, and in the commentary, the angel explains that the 4 beasts that he saw are like 4 nations.
Yeah, 4 nations.
That are opposed.
And it's normally identified as Babylon,
Rome.
It's like Rome is the one that's
the 4th one. Yeah.
It's a good prophecy, because it came true.
So Jews, they interpret the 4th beast as referring to the Catholic Church, or to the Rome.
They're actually
anyway.
Because the Catholic Church is the true Israel, which is why modern Israel is a completely immoral creation. The Talmud, all of it. They should have all become Christian, because the church is the new Israel. But
so Muslims also have an interpretation as well.
Okay, what's your interpretation?
Muslims understand that the saints of the Most High refers to the nation of Islam or the Prophet Muhammad.
Okay.
Because here Daniel says the one who appeared like a son of man, he's given dominion and power. And
the son of man is Muhammad.
Not the son of man is Muhammad, but the son of man is the Muslim nation or the Muslim community are the saints.
Okay.
Because
it's like the collective Muslim community, or only those that are viewed really highly in the Ummah?
I would just say the Ummah.
The whole Ummah. Okay.
Yeah. So because in verse 27, I think it is, it says that the saints are given power and dominion, and people from all nations come and serve them.
Okay.
Or words to that effect. So it's the same, it's a parallel. So even if you don't regard the saints as being the Muslim Ummah, it's referring to a particular nation. So Israel sees that as themselves.
No, so the beasts are nations. I don't dispute that at all. That's I don't know.
But the Son of Man
that's the official Catholic position.
Actually, read the New Jerome Biblical Commentary. They actually agree with my interpretation.
I still use this.
So where does it agree with your interpretation?
So they would agree that it's referring to a nation of people, like saints.
The Son of Man?
Yeah.
I would have a hard time believing that, and this is why I wanted to say that. This is why I brought this up.
They wouldn't say in its context it refers to Jesus. They wouldn't say from its context it refers to Jesus. But they would.
When Jesus
the New Jerome Biblical
Jesus gives himself this title in the trial of the Sanhedrin, which is why the high priest accuses him of blasphemy.
So some scholars say that Jesus in Mark's Gospel is speaking about another Son of Man. That sometimes when Jesus uses the title Son of Man, it refers to him, and other times it refers to someone else.
That seems a bit ad hoc to me.
So if you look in Mark 8:41, Jesus says, "Whoever rejects me from this generation, so shall the Son of Man, when he comes, reject them." So there it seems like he's speaking about another Son of Man.
But that would be because the Son of Man...
It's the last verse of Mark. chapter 8.
I was just saying,
okay.
let's go through actually. But I would say that doesn't strain my interpretation of the Son of Man at all, because the Son of Man, the prophecies this is referring to, these are eschatological events that are going to happen at the end of the world. So if he's talking about the Son of Man to come, that can still be himself, even though he's a walking, talking human being on the earth at a particular point in history at this point.
Yeah, but when Jesus says when he comes, he doesn't say when I return. But when he comes,
this is the point, Jack. What he's trying to say. Go ahead, make that once more, please.
Yeah. So like when he comes, seems to imply that he's not yet here.
Okay, is it here?
It's like the last.
So after the resurrection.
It's Mark chapter 8.
Oh, okay.
It's like the last verse or the second last verse of that chapter. I think it's verse 48 or something.
If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes in his Father's glory with the holy angels.
Yeah, so when he comes, rather than when he returns or comes back. But in
that's one possible interpretation. But
you know, in the later Gospels, they seem to.
Hold on,
sorry. Yeah.
But I think the interpretation that fits much more neatly, because notice what he says about his Father, when in other places he's called the Son of God, he speaks of God as the Father, and so he's now speaking about his Father's glory. I think it's a much more neat, it just fits more neatly with the text.
Call God Father.
No, that's not the point that I'm making. What I'm saying is that the Son of Man is going to be ashamed of these people when he comes in his Father's glory, and yet he's saying that, so there's a contrast here. He's saying the people are ashamed of me now, so the Son of Man will be ashamed of them in the future at the end of the world. Now that makes perfect sense if the Son of Man is still Jesus, because he's basically saying, if you reject me now, I'm going to reject you later.
Well, he's saying when he comes rather than when he returns.
Yeah, I understand.
That's a crucial point. You see.
I know. He's not saying it would. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. It would be easier if he said it when I come. That would make my job a whole lot easier. I'm not gonna prance around that point. But I'm still saying that the interpretation that puts Jesus as the Son of Man fits that more neatly. Because the point that he's making here is that if you reject me, I'm going to reject you in the future. It doesn't make sense that if you reject me, this other figure will reject you at some point in the future, when he also calls himself the Son of Man in other places. So when you see the Son of Man title applied to him so many times, when he applies it to himself on trial, it's just such an awkward interpretation to say, yeah, it may refer to him here, but there's another Son of Man somewhere else. That seems so ad hoc to me, because this is a really strong argument. That's what it seems like to me.
I mean, he's prophesizing the coming of the Son of Man.
Yeah, which is him.
Event hasn't happened yet, but it's still to come.
Yeah.
So you would only say that prophecy applies to Jesus when he returns, but you can't say it applies to him at the moment, because he hasn't yet returned. You can only, it's just based upon blind belief.
By applied to him, I would say you can still call him the Son of Man before he fulfills this final action of coming on the clouds. But he's only going to come on the clouds once. That's only going to happen once at the very end of time. Does that answer your question?
I mean, I appreciate the point you're making. People like Bruce Chilton.
Chilton, the New Testament scholar.
So he makes the point that when Jesus speaks of the Son of Man in this context, he's not using like parousia or second coming language, but he's saying that he's still to come. And it's not just him, but also E.P. Sanders as well. In fact, E.P. Sanders makes the point that at the trial of Jesus, in Luke's version, there's no actual blasphemy. So in Mark, they accused him of blasphemy, but Luke doesn't have any blasphemy.
Go. I think I've got quite a long train journey back to uni, so we'll make this the end here.
No, it's cool. If you guys need to go now, it's fine.
It's alright.
I pretty much said what I was going to say, so. And we can keep in touch. So.
Certainly, I'll give you my email. Arrested. Okay, here. So. I'll read it. So, at daybreak, the council of the elders of the people, both the chief priests and the teachers of the law, met together, and Jesus was led before them. If you are the Messiah, they said, tell us. Jesus answered, if I tell you, you will not believe me, and if I asked you, you would not answer. But from now on, the Son of Man will be seated at the right hand of the mighty God. They all asked, "Are you then the Son of God?" This is obviously a different title than Son of Man. He replied, "You say that I am." Then they said, "Why do we need any more testimony? We've heard it from his own lips." So to be fair, there's not an explicit accusation. It's not like Mark where he says, "You have heard the blasphemy."
Yeah,
but
that's what I was going to actually show you. Yeah, Mark it says it's blasphemy, but Luke seems to remove it.
But you've got to be careful here, because
why does Luke remove it? Why do you think he removes it?
Maybe he didn't think it was important to note down. These are real eyewitness accounts, or based on the accounts of other eyewitnesses. And eyewitness testimony is never like word for word the same. Because if you saw eyewitness testimony that was word for word the same, describing the same event, you would say, well, these guys obviously just agreed to write down the exact same thing.
The Son of God, claiming to be Son of God, was a blasphemy in Jewish culture.
Yeah, I agree with you.
But Mark maybe reading the Gentile definition of Son of God back into like the life of Jesus, and that's why in Mark they accuse him of blasphemy, whereas Luke having better knowledge may have.
But that's presupposing that the high priest didn't actually say you've heard the blasphemy. But if you're going to say that, then you're just calling that presupposition accuses Mark of being a liar. But if Mark is lying about what he says,
not that
he can throw out the whole Bible in one go.
So just check this out. Not that he's lying, but what?
Yeah, Mark isn't deliberately lying, but he's reading his own Gentile understanding of the title Son of God. He's assuming that it would have been blasphemy, but Luke having carefully.
But Mark isn't. That's not like an editorial note from Mark. That's him quoting the high priest. So if the high priest didn't actually say that, then Mark is a liar. Which means we can throw the whole gospel out and the whole Bible altogether. Which means there's no point even having this conversation.
Because Mark also has sources as well. So he's relying on his own sources. So the sources that has reached him says blasphemy that Jesus. So he may have just included that from his understanding of Son of God.
I get that, but if he's including that from his understanding, he's not presenting it that way. He's presenting it as if it's something the high priest himself said.
Because that's what he believes. So he's sincere, but just because you're sincere doesn't mean you're sincerely.
Yeah,
right.
I agree. But the point is, did the high priest actually say that? It's not.
Mark believes he did, but it doesn't mean he's lying. But Luke seems to, because Luke says like many have written, but I carefully investigated these things to write you a more accurate account.
Yeah.
So Luke is like correcting like the previous.
Why is Luke saying that I'm writing a more accurate account? Is he trying to cast some perhaps uncertainty on Mark and Matthew?
Luke
I would say he's just trying to give a more polished, well-written account of what has already come before him.
But by definition, it is an accurate account, which therefore, wouldn't you say that implies that
he didn't consider the other ones to be satisfactory?
If you could like go back in a time machine and watch everything that happened in Jesus' life, right, from start to finish, and you compare that to what Mark wrote down, Mark is going to be missing quite a lot of things. And so the fact that Luke wants to include as many accurate details as he can, it doesn't necessarily follow that Mark got things wrong. It could just be that Mark only missed things out, which doesn't contradict the Christian worldview.
I don't want to keep you guys. I'm happy to continue.
Right, just one more thing, just as a conclusion.
Okay, sure.
Now, I think that you, for a gentleman, Jack, and I'm delighted to see that you're prepared to concede points when they become rather self-apparent. So within this discussion, in terms of the divinity of Christ, I'd like Nazam also just to maybe wrap up this conclusion. Nazam, is it satisfactory to say that the New Testament does not teach that Jesus is Almighty God in the ontological sense?
I believe that.
Sorry.
I know you need to go, but I just want you to.
It depends what you mean, and I know this sounds like a cop-out, but it depends what you mean by mighty God, because in some sense only the Father is Almighty God, because he's the source and fount of the Godhead. But if you mean that Jesus is identified with the divine nature, then yes, Jesus is Almighty God, and the New Testament does teach that.
I disagree.
Okay, sure, that's fine.
There is no verse that says he shares the same substance and nature as God Father, but we can maybe discuss that.
You can write the details.
What would be convenient?
And on the quiet, you can exchange emails. We don't want your emails to come public.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Is it okay? I'll write it.
That's fine. Yeah.
We just come to
They've been here for over about an hour, so you might have to leave your bank account details, because we're going to have to charge you.
Finish that. Conclusion summary. Finish that, yeah?
I need a pen.
Just write it down. Don't need to.
Sorry, it's not working, the pen. Do you just want to write it in your phone?
I think I've got a pen in my bag actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
As a student.
Still speaking or?
I have
Thank you for the conversation today, by the way.
That was really nice. Yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, at the end of the day, we're just doing it out of like sincerity.
Yeah, I know, it's sincerity. You know, each of us think that we've got a good way to get to heaven, which is revealed from God. And so, you know, if you didn't want to share that, it's kind of selfish. So,
Vatican teaches that Muslims profess in the God of Abraham.
yeah.
You know,
I agree. I hold to all the councils.
the catechism.
It does say that Muslims may be included in the plan of salvation. It does still form there an error. And I don't want to give you a false impression of the church teachings. It says that anyone who knows that the church is necessary for salvation and obstinately refuses to enter into the church can never be saved. So you can only be, thank you, as a non-Catholic, you can only be saved through invincible ignorance. So if it's by your own fault you don't become Catholic and be baptised, you will never enter heaven. This goes for
He's not going to be very happy.
This goes for
I'm telling you now, you want to learn about Christianity, the man. So come over here, Christians, if you think you've got intelligent, sincere people, polite people, educated people like Jack, who wants to come and have a conversation, this is your chance. Come along, challenge us. And we are hopeful he will reconsider his position. Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi. One more thing, just before we do go. This is our barcode for our organisation, which is called, as you can see, continuous message.
in the back.
Which is called continuousmessage.com. We've got a QR code in which we are trying to take the dawah to another level altogether. This means getting an office which we can have here in Stratford exclusively for dawah purposes. This is a glorious opportunity for people. This is not a scam to take your money. Everything is for the sake of Allah. We want Stratford to be an epicenter of Islam. It's very busy here. We've had a fabulous discussion. If you just click onto this QR code on the site continuousmessage.com, this is your opportunity to contribute. If you're Muslims, we know for the sake of Allah you do a lot. Muslims give here. This is going to be an epicenter of Islam, Stratford. And the brother Hamza has been working diligently for years and years by bringing the table from all by himself, setting it all up. And he allows us just to take over. We've got all the cameras here for the sake of Allah. So please, this is the cue. Hit it, contribute towards it. The dawah will go to another level. Offices will be built. Training will be given. So much, tons of more things which I can make mention of. Please, for the sake of Allah, contribute to this QR code and Allah will reward you in ways you cannot even fathom. That's my experience. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
جزاك الله خير. أخي مايك أخي.